Decatur Book Festival is a nonprofit. It depends on sponsors and donations to bring great authors to Decatur each year. Please consider a tax-deductible donation to support the festival by going to the festival website. Lastly, please take a moment to ensure all of your device ringtones are turned off. Now, please let me introduce our panel. Our moderator today is Gary Hauk, who is a writer, editor, and historian. He served Emory University for more than 30 years as vice president and senior advisor to the president. He is also the author or editor of more than 24 books. Gary will introduce the rest of our panel.
Thank you, Amy. And thank you all for being here. It's a wonderful occasion, and I'm delighted to be asked to moderate this panel. I've enjoyed getting to know these four authors as we have met over Zoom to plan this occasion. So here we go. Let me begin by introducing Zana Pouncey. Zana, you want to raise your hand so they know you? I'm proud to say that Zana is a graduate of Emory University with a degree in environmental science. She has worked as an environmental advocate and educator in nonprofit organizations, including Trees Atlanta, Zoo Atlanta, and the Atlanta Botanical Garden. She is a recipient of a Grosvenor Teacher Fellowship from the National Geographic Society and serves on the board of the Atlanta Green Artist Alliance. She has written for the education blog of the National Geographic Society and frequently speaks at environmental conferences and teacher workshops. She is a native Southerner, but she has called Atlanta home for 10 years. And while she loves the city, as you will hear, she is also a passionate environmentalist to the core of her being. So, Zana, thank you for being here. Zana's co-author of Hiking Metro Atlanta's Hidden Forests is Jonah McDonald. He knows something. Jonah knows something about hiking because he made his way to Atlanta on foot by through hiking the 2,200-mile Appalachian Trail from Maine some 2 decades ago. He serves as the DeKalb County Park Naturalist at Mason Mill Park, not far from here off Claremont Avenue. After publishing Hiking Atlanta's Hidden Forests, In Town and Out in 2014, he published a second book in 2020, Secret Atlanta, a guide to the weird, wonderful, and obscure. Jonah is a storyteller, a TV host, and a tour guide who loves exploring Atlanta on a bicycle, in a canoe, or on foot, looking for a new story around every bend. Anne Litrel is a visual artist, and she's also a fine writer, as you will discover in reading the book that she has done with Charles. She has had a studio in Woodstock, Georgia for nearly 30 years, where she works in watercolors, oils, pastels, and pen and ink. Although she paints beautiful portraits, as you could see on her website, and has filled commissions for private and corporate clients across the country, her passion is painting landscapes and historic town scenes and nature images close to home, from Georgia's Blue Ridge Mountains to Cherokee County landmarks. The artwork in 35 Natural Wonders of Georgia is the product of an ambitious 5 years of hiking, kayaking, and painting across the state from mountains to the coast. And finally, Charles Seabrook is perhaps the best-known naturalist in the state of Georgia. He obviously needs no introduction, but I'll go on.
You need all the introduction I can give.
He retired from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution in 2005 after 34 years of writing about science and the environment. He continues to write regularly for the AJC about matters ranging from butterflies on Panola Mountain to wildflowers in roadside ditches, and from what to do when a bird gets in your house to how to appreciate the diminishing light in late August. He's the author of 3 previous books, Red Clay, Pink Cadillacs, and White Gold, The Kaolin Chalk Wars, Cumberland Island, Strong Women, Wild Horses, and The World of the Salt Marsh, appreciating and protecting the tidal marshes of the southeastern Atlantic coast. As you can see from these titles, Charles has a gift for the memorable phrase. So thank you to our panelists. We have been talking on Zoom about how to approach this, and I thought we might start by asking each of the co-authors to tell us just a little bit about how they came to meet up and develop their books. So, Jonah and Zana, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So I was telling Gary earlier, I feel like the universe kind of brought Jonah and I together. I was working at Camp Scene Environmental Adventures, which is just down the road here. It's an after-school camp for K through 5, and we go hiking pretty much every single day. That's the whole premise of the camp. And we used the very first version of Jonah's book, hiking, around Atlanta. And so that kind of gives you an idea of how successful that concept was. You could bring these little biddies out to the trail. We could go for a hike, be back in time for pickup. And so that's when I first learned of Jonah and who he was. And then we met when I was working at the Atlanta Botanical Garden. We met at a conference, and this was in March of 2020. So we all know what happened, March of 2020. But yeah, just right before, the world shut down, got to meet in person and get to know each other. And then we became co-workers. I was working at DeKalb County at Arabia Mountain. And as you know, Jonah works at Mason Mill for DeKalb County Parks. And so that's how we got to know each other.
And I knew that after the success of 2014's Hiking Atlanta's Hidden Forests guidebook, it needed to be updated, because after 10 years, there's a lot of changes that happened in the city. And as I started looking around at what trails had come online or had become more cared for, or had just changed dramatically in those 10 years, I realized there needed to be a new hiking guidebook. But not just a revision of the hiking guidebook. It needed to be doubled in length. And you don't want a hiking guidebook that's this thick. So I knew it needed to be 2 guidebooks. And I thought to myself, that is a big project. And my wife and my daughter said, that is a big project. And right at that time, Zana decided to shift her career and move to a different organization, but was, I think, currently unemployed when I first asked you this. Is that right?
It was my decision. Know what I was getting myself into, but Jonah asked me. I think he said, "You're unemployed right now. Have you help me with this project?" And of course, I said yes. And now I work for the National Park Conservation Association. We're a nonprofit that does advocacy for the National Park Service. And it's been great to work with Jonah on this project.
I want to clarify, though, that it wasn't just me saying this is a big project, I need somebody to share the load, but rather one of the things I learned after writing a hiking guidebook by myself is that a guidebook written by yourself is not as good of a guidebook as a guidebook written with someone else. And so we're very similar people, but we're also very different in our experiences and our identities. And so bringing those different perspectives into the book, I think, made these 2 new books that much stronger. And so I know it sounded like me saying, Zana, you want to do some work? But it was really, I think, both of us putting our minds together to explain the trails and to present them in a way that hopefully will be more connected with each one of you.
And I have to say that having looked at the book, which I have here, it really is a marvelous guide full of detailed maps, instructions on how to get to the 70 or so places within an hour's drive of downtown Atlanta, and wonderful highlights of landmarks, historical sites, and so on that you will see on the various trails. So you clearly have done meticulous work in putting this together. Thank you. Charles and Anne, how did you all connect, and how did this beautiful book come about?
Let's see, is that working?
Yeah, right up here.
Right there? Yeah. Okay, good. Well, I got a
Right up here.
Master Naturalist certification in 2017, which I'd lived in Atlanta for 30 years, and honestly, that opened my eyes to how beautiful Georgia is and just the variety of natural habitats, all the way from the coastal marshlands up to the cool heights of Blue Ridge. And as an artist, I thought, well, this really needs to be painted. Let me find a list of places in Georgia, the most beautiful places to paint. And so I made the big mistake of getting on the internet. And there on the first page was this list, 35 Natural Wonders of Georgia to See Before You Die by Charles Seabrook. I've heard of Charles, of course, Mr. Seabrook. He's writing for the AJC. I thought, this is a great list. I looked it over. There's some places here I've never heard of. Some you have, but some I hadn't. I thought, oh, piece of cake, 35 places. Let's see, I'll hit 1 or 2 a month, 2 or 3 years tops. I'll be all done. Anyway, each of these places deserves an entire book, probably. As I got into the project, I was traveling and painting, and I emailed Mr. Seabrook and asked him for a few tips. A few of these places I wanted a little guidance on what should I be painting. He's very gracious, emails me back, and I start emailing him some other questions. Sending him pictures of the paintings. I'm a monthly columnist, so I'm sending him some stories, and I'm like, all right, I'm bugging this guy too much. Let me take him out to lunch. So we meet for lunch. Well, Charlie's never met a stranger, ever. We really hit it off, and we continued corresponding as I did the project. The paintings are stacking up. I have a binder with a tag for each of the 35 places that's getting thicker and thicker, and it becomes apparent Charlie's list doesn't need to be just paintings. It should be a book. So I arranged for another lunch. And I said, Charlie, your list is amazing, and it really needs to be a book. And for the science part, you need to write the sections for each of it. And he said, well, I've been working on another project, but this sounds pretty good. You've convinced me. He doesn't know me. And that's when I knew Charlie is crazy. Anyway, that's how the book came to be. We did end up getting to work together for a couple years, a few road trips, and I will say that in addition to being a great writer, he is a great friend and very modest. It took me 3 years to see his list of awards in journalism, which he finally submitted to the marketing department at UGA Press. And I said, Charlie, you're so modest. You've never mentioned any of this. Anyway, it's been a great project. That's how it got started.
Charlie, do you want to defend yourself?
Well, actually, we met at a bar in Little Bitchy, Georgia. Just kidding. But anyway, I just want to say thank you all for coming out. I mean, what a crowd. But as some of you know, if not most of you know, if not all of you know, I write my weekly column for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and have been doing so for 31 years. It's a weekly column, Wild Georgia. Anyway, I write this column usually on a Monday, and it runs on a Saturday. And there was one day, though, in February 2008, when I woke up and nothing would come to my head. You know, that's the greatest fear of a writer. And I looked around and saw on my bookshelf there by my desk this book called 1001 Places to Visit Before You Die. I said, that might be an idea. So I said, well, you know, why don't I write a column about places that you should see in Georgia. And the only places I know very well are the natural areas. So I spent the whole day going back and forth, revising the list, calling a couple of people and so forth. And I came up with 35 places. Now, why 35 places? Because that's all the space I had in my column. But anyway, I wrote it. I said, well, this will get me by until next week, until I can, things turned out to be one of the best read columns I've ever written. And a few years later, as Ann says, she sent me an email saying not only was she visiting all of these places, but she was painting every one of them, which caused my ego to go right out of the window. But anyway, so as Ann pointed out, we got together and had lunch, and at some point we broached the idea of a book and gave our proposal to the University of Georgia Press, and within a very short time they said they liked it, and that's it.
That's a good story. So we have we want to have time at the end of our conversation for questions from the audience, and I have some questions to kind of prime the pump. But before we get to that, the panelists thought that there might be some fun ways to introduce their books to you. And so, Jonah and Zana, why don't we start with you and your reveal that you have planned?
So, within our hiking guidebook, there are 125 hikes that you can do in Metro Atlanta. Where, of course, this book just came out. This is the Metro Atlanta book, but there's also the In-Town Atlanta book. And so between the two books, there's a huge amount of hiking that you can do without driving more than an hour, unless there's traffic. Within each of those books, Zana and I identified landmarks, special trees, historic sites, waterfalls that you might be interested in exploring. But we got kind of inspired by Charlie and Ann's book about the natural wonders of Georgia. And it turns out there's a list that's much shorter and less and more exclusive, I think, than y'all's list of 35 places, but the 7 natural wonders of Georgia. And you can look up what that list is. But Zana and I began thinking, how fun would it be if Atlanta had, or, the Atlanta metro area, had a 7 natural wonders of Metro Atlanta? And what would those be? Because, we've hiked just about every natural place inside, an hour from town. And so we started putting our heads together, and we wanted to share with you the 7 natural wonders of Metro Atlanta as hopefully little breadcrumbs for places that you might want to visit and places you might want to hike. So we're going to go through those 7 and give you just a little bit of a taste of each one.
So this is in no particular order. It's just places that we recommend. So the first one is Waffle House. Just drinking.
It is certainly a wonder.
They're a wonder. But, if you are not from Georgia, if you're from out of town, these are the places that, I think really kind of sell like Atlanta as a ecological paradise, which I don't think it's often thought of as, like we're the city in the trees. And yes, we are a city, but we have all of these amazing natural wonders too. So my one is the Chattahoochee River. Just gorgeous. It's really well managed by the National Park Service. It's part of some of it is part of the Chattahoochee River National Recreation Area. And yeah, it's just great because you can visit the river in so many different ways. You can hike along all of the different trail routes that there are. You can go tubing, you can go rafting. I love the Chattahoochee so much. For my bachelorette party, I made my friends go shoot the hooch with me. And yeah, there's also just so many great organizations doing work to protect and preserve the river. And it just hits so many different parts of Atlanta too. I think regardless of where you are in the city, you can find a moment of access to the Chattahoochee. And so definitely wanted to include that as one of our 7 wonders of Atlanta.
So what hike would you do if you were telling them how to see the Chattahoochee? What's your number one Chattahoochee hike? This is always the worst question. Sorry about that, Zana.
There's so many great spots. I would recommend Boundary Waters. It's a little bit out of the way from Atlanta, but it's in Carrollton, Douglas County, which is where I grew up. And it's just such a unique place to view the Chattahoochee. I think, depending on where you are, the Chattahoochee can look really different. It flows really different. And yeah, I think that's just like a little underrated spot where the Chattahoochee touches that park.
Good choice. I like that one too. Gold Branch would be my favorite unit of the Chattahoochee National Recreation Area. So everybody knows the Chattahoochee River. There's songs about it. It is, the river of Atlanta. But you all know it's not the only river of Atlanta. We also have the South River that flows through Atlanta. And we decided that one of the 7 natural wonders of Metro Atlanta is the South River Forest, sometimes called the Weelaunee Forest, which is the Muskogee name for it. And the South River Forest is a large area that was, I think, originally defined as that, using that terminology, by the ARC, the Atlanta Regional Commission. And the reason why we want to consider that one of the natural wonders is because, one, the South River is an underrated river. And I think the reason it's underrated is twofold. I mean, y'all may disagree with me. I think one of the reasons is because the South River starts right here in Metro Atlanta. The Chattahoochee River starts way up north, so it's big by the time it reaches Metro Atlanta. But the South River starts here. The South River starts right near like East Point, Hapeville, that area, right? And so it's a small river as it comes through Metro Atlanta. And so it gets underrated for that reason. And I think also has been less cared for. It's not surrounded by a national park. And as a result is a river that's oftentimes been polluted and not cared for as much. So this idea of the South River Forest is all of these public green spaces, and there's private ones as well, that surround the South River. And when I started looking at all the places that you could go visit the South River that we found hiking trails near, the list just went on and on from the Southtown Trail, which is nowhere near where you live, to Southside Park, to Lake Charlotte Nature Preserve, to Constitution Lakes Park. And then you can keep on going all the way out to Arabia Mountain, finding places to hike near the South River. And so I think both of us are big fans of these underrated green spaces around our underrated river that hopefully, we can uplift the perception of.
Yeah, one of my favorite spots along the South River is Constitution Lakes, Bell's Head Trail, and I love going this time of year too because it's kind of like fun and spooky. So our next 7 natural wonders of Atlanta would be the Monadnocks. So technically, this is a 3 in 1. So Monadnock is a term that just kind of means like isolated hill. And so in Atlanta, we have Stone Mountain, we have Panola Mountain, and Arabia Mountain, which are, these big granite mountains. I have a special connection. I used to work at Arabia Mountain, and it is just this landscape of rock that you would assume is really barren and boring. But once you get out on the rock, there's just so much life that's actually happening there. It's really incredible to see. And there's just nothing else like it. We have our North Georgia mountains, the Appalachians, but the Monadnocks are just something really special within themselves. And each of them are so unique. You can go to all 3 at once. They do a Monadnock Madness where you can visit each of them. But yeah, you really see the differences and the similarities. So Stone Mountain, is the youngest. Arabia Mountain was about 400 million years old. And then Panola Mountain. And so Stone Mountain and Arabia were quarried. So they actually have a really, deep history connection to Georgia. And Arabia Mountain, the granite there is actually all across the country. And so you can go out onto the mountain and you can see where they were quarrying the rock. And you can see the restoration that's been taking place. And then you go to Panola, which was never touched. It was never quarried. And it looks really different. It's really pristine granite outcrop. And just any time of year, there is something really cool going on. If you go in March, you can see the Diamorpha blue. it's September. You see the yellow daisy blooms. It's one of my absolute favorite places in Atlanta. If you haven't explored those monadnocks, I highly recommend it.
And I guess Kennesaw Mountain is also known as a monadnock, and there's lots of hiking to be had there as well. So we'll go through the remaining four a little quicker. The next is the Roswell Mill Waterfall. So we really wanted to include a waterfall in this list because Atlanta does have waterfalls, and there's lots of options to choose from. There's a waterfall at Henderson Park in Tucker. There's a waterfall at Cascade Springs Nature Preserve over on the west side of town. There are waterfalls just barely outside of town on the south side at Cochran Mill Park. Waterfall after waterfall. I even like to say there's a waterfall at Mason Mill Park. It's only about 2 feet of a waterfall, but it's still a waterfall. But we decided kind of the natural wonder, the one that people think is the iconic waterfall of Metro Atlanta, ended up getting on the cover of our book. This is the Roswell Mill Waterfall right here, and it's in the Vickery Creek unit of the Chattahoochee River National Recreation Area.
All right, so number 4 would be the West Side Reservoir within the Shirley Clark Franklin Park. And that's on the west side of town. It's a beautiful, beautiful green space. And the reservoir itself is massive. It's massive. It holds 1.9 billion gallons of water. And it could hold the entire Mercedes-Benz Stadium inside of it for reference. And it's also one of my favorite skyline views in Atlanta. I also like Grant Park. That's my second, but just standing and looking out over the water with the skyline in the distance, it really just kind of hits home about Atlanta and how great of a city it is. And there's really cool art installations there as well that speak to the Phoenix, when Atlanta was burned and then rising from the ashes. So definitely a great place to check out if you have not been there.
Jonah and Zana, if we could wrap up in about another 2 minutes, we'll give Charlie and Ann a chance.
Well, we've got 2 more, 1 minute per. This one's controversial. We decided to include the bamboo forest on the East Palisades unit of the Chattahoochee River National Recreation Area as one of the natural wonders of Metro Atlanta. And y'all know that giant timber bamboo is not a native species to Georgia. We do have a native bamboo. It's called river cane. There's also switch cane. And but if you've ever been to that crazy, weird bamboo forest right along the Chattahoochee River, you know that you're transported to this whole just other vibe. And if you haven't been there before, you should take a hike and go spend a little time right along the Chattahoochee River in this tall forest of bamboo.
All right, and last but certainly not least is the Hank Aaron Oak. And so this oak is located in Connolly Nature Preserve in East Point, and it is a state co-championed oak tree, and it is a massive, massive tree. It's a behemoth, and it is just so gorgeous and just really awe-inspiring to stand under a tree that is that old and has that much history. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about it.
Well, to wrap that up, I guess, a champion tree is defined by the largest tree of its species in a certain area. So the Hank Aaron Oak is the city champion and a state co-champion. And also the park itself is kind of just a not very well known one in East Point. So you should go hiking at Connolly Nature Park, see this fantastic tree. And if you go out in early spring, you also might catch sight of pink lady slippers, which grow around the base of the Hank Aaron Oak.
That sounds wonderful. 7 Natural Wonders of Metro Atlanta. It's it will be on your internet sometime soon. I guess. I hope. Ann and Charles have developed a little guessing game for you all. Which of you would like to introduce this? Ann.
So, can I see your book a minute, Charlie? I just wanted to.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
All right. Okay. I just wanted to say briefly, the thing about this book that we really wanted to make sure that it appealed to a lot of different people. And I think in this age of multimedia, there's a chance, that books may get ignored. So the interesting part about this book was that it has a lot of layers. There's 100 paintings and drawings. Charlie writes the science and the geology and what makes each place so special for each of the 35 places. And there are surprises here, I think. There may be some that you've never heard of. And then I write about it from the point of view, what is it like to visit for the first time? So you get the essay, and they're very lot of different experiences. Some of them are in a whitewater raft going, churning up and down and just hoping you don't fall off. And other ones are you have to travel in a boat to islands that you can't get to by car. So, and then the captions for the drawings and the paintings talk about the art. So this is also a book for art. So I think Charlie and I thought of this as a book, kind of a gift. All the gifts that Georgia has to offer us, we tried to really show, wow, Georgia has all these gifts for us. So anyway, we were going to do a guessing game. See if you can get this. We have a couple places. Charlie's going to read first. And what we're going to do is we'll just read a couple of alternating passages from the book, and we ask you not to shout out your guess, and then we'll ask for guesses. All right, go ahead, Charlie.
Okay, I wrote this, but I hope I can pronounce some of the words. But the invertebrate, which is animals without backbones, as most of you know, but the invertebrate species surpass by magnitudes the number of creatures with backbones, as one would expect. This natural wonder is home to countless insect species, collectively crucial to nutrient recycling. As much as 40% of the forest canopy is consumed by insects and their larvae, particularly the caterpillars of moths and butterflies. More than 1,000 species of moths alone have been found.
The water, too, is a surprise. Not at all murky, but translucent, like dark tea, making of the surface a perfect mirror, which dazzles us from the moment of our morning launch. Our kayaks laden, we enter a mile of man-made canal, paddling silently through a tunnel of overhanging trees, their perfect reflections lending our progress the unearthly effect of traveling through a wormhole of trees. All right.
Guesses?
All right, that was the easy one. Good. Shall we move on to the next one? You want to read the next one?
And not a gator was mentioned.
Why don't we go on to the next one? All right.
All right, I'll give you your science lesson. And then on a hot, sunny July 18th, 1970, an anxious crowd of more than 30,000 people, including Georgia's then governor, stood at the rim of this natural wonder to watch one of the most daring stunts ever performed by a human. Famed tightrope aerialist and acrobat, Harold Walenda was about to walk 1,000 feet across this yawning chasm on a 5/8-inch thick cable strung nearly 800 feet above the canyon floor.
This Georgia natural wonder is home to one of the deepest canyons east of the Rockies. The day of our arrival dawns gray and drizzly, but the canyon brushes the drizzle aside as a trifle of no consequence. Immediately and completely, it pulls us into a wild and dazzling landscape, and the effect is that of an electric jolt. From the first overlook on the North Rim Trail, the canyon captures us, drawing us to its brink to marvel at the sheer walls of granite, the bright fall trees on their heights, and to peer down into the white waters of the river far below. A long zigzag of metal stairs lures us down 300 steps to a suspension bridge swaying over the falls, and we cross white-knuckled, clutching the railing as we swing just 80 feet above the roar of the falls below.
Guesses? All right, these are too easy.
I know. All right, we're gonna give you one harder one.
Give them a tough one now.
All right. All of my family said, you need to put all the choices up on the board. No one will get these. I'm like, I'll do the next one, and then you. It was the website announcement, all caps, centered large on the page that was the clue to the hometown spirit of the event. These digs are open to all. No need to sign up. Just show up for all rock swap and digs. We walked past the gate between rows of tables groaning with rocks. Smiling vendors displayed placards which proclaimed, "We'll sell or swap." Rock specimens dazzled with glittering facets, startling hues, or fantastic forms. We felt ourselves beguiled and held captive, helpless under the spell of the dizzying beauty and variety. The rocks were iridescent with blues and reds and golds, or sprouting with cauliflower-like forms, or flashing in arrays of glassy crystals. Finally, we pulled ourselves away and we entered the main pit, and it opened wide to the sky, a gaping crater of rose-colored rock, looking like something from another planet, or a set dreamed up, maybe, for a Star Wars sequel.
Well, among rock hounds, this natural wonder is in Lincoln County. It's world famous, an international mecca for collecting prize rocks and minerals. Armed with chisels, rock hammers, picks, and other geological tools, scores of rock hounds, professional and amateur, young and old, descend into the pits to pound, scrape, and dig for minerals. They can keep what they can find. As they dig next to each other, they often swap stories about individuals who have made valuable finds over the years, such as an Augusta woman who found a large rutile crystal worth more than $5,000. Some specimens of lazulite, which is a relatively rare, lustrous blue mineral, also have fetched thousands of dollars.
Guesses?
Yeah.
Say it again so that
Graves Mountain. Right, that was fewer. That was more satisfying. There's more obscure ones.
Matter of fact, those digs are taking place this weekend. But if you get there tomorrow, you might find a rare gem yourself.
All right.
So I think we want to invite questions from the audience. I believe there's a microphone floating around out there somewhere for people who might have questions. Do we have any questions?
I need to take somebody's mic to hear for question.
So you can come up for question?
So if you have a question, please come to the center microphone there.
So I'm Paul Bolster, and my question to you is, how is Georgia doing? How's the legislature, the governor doing at protecting our natural wonders that you guys have all discussed?
Wonderful question. Somebody want to take that?
Well, that's one of the things I really worry about. That's a good question because I worry about it. And when I go around seeing all these places, we have right now, there are some land preservation efforts going on, private groups such as, to extend the Chattahoochee River corridor and so forth. And, some group the other day bought 8,000 acres of next to the Okie and Finoki, and now to stop that awful mining proposal they had. Of course, that doesn't mean the Okefenokee is out of danger. But what gets me is now everywhere I go, all God's earth is just scraped up. Red clay all over the place, and all of these data centers and electric car factories and battery factories and warehouses and all. I mean, they say, this is 1,000 acres of wooded land. Well, this is raw land. This is vacant land, undeveloped land. Like it's no use. Where you got all these little animals and birds and everything else, it's not vacant. It's home to them. And the trees there, they make oxygen. We need it. But I'm afraid, even though there are some land preservation efforts now still going on, I'm afraid I don't have the statistics for this, but I'm afraid we're losing more land than we're gaining. And when we should be, with all of the people coming into Georgia, we need more land preserved. Eugene Omodum, who is the great ecologist from the University of Georgia, once said in a scientific paper that Georgia should be preserving at least 20% of its land. And that'll never happen, but I think we're losing more. So
I wanted to add that one of the surprises for me of the book was that Charlie really addressed each of the 35 places and who saved it and how did it get saved. And it was really quite special to hear about that. And we're hoping that that will awaken people to what we have now and to help preserve it.
I can't speak to the state of Georgia, but or the legislature, but I think that something that's important to note is that there is a movement to think of Atlanta as a space for nature. The City of Atlanta Parks and Recreation is working on, I believe it's called a 10-minute walk for everybody to a public park. Not every public park is a forest, ecosystem, but every public park is a green space, and it's a space for people. And I think that's a movement that's really strong. I think also, as Zana and I were finding more and more hikes in the Metro Atlanta that people were caring for, that people were going and experiencing. It doesn't always succeed to just have people fall in love with places, as we saw with the old Atlanta prison farm becoming the police training facility. It doesn't always work to have it be bubbling up from the public, but I think that it takes a major step. If you go and visit the places they've written about, if you go hike the trails that we've written about, the more people that are in those spaces, I really do believe that moves the needle. And I think we've seen that. Those of you who've been in Atlanta a long time know that the vibe around hiking and around nature in Atlanta has really shifted over the last 20 to 30 years. And for the better, at least for those of us who consider ourselves outdoors people, environmentalists, conservationists.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? I have a question. Oh, yes. Come on up.
I'd like to follow up on your question.
Speak into the mic, please.
I'd like to follow up on your question. Has the city allocated any funds for this 10-minute walk to the parks? And do they have any kind of timeline or goal for completion?
Oh man, I wish I work for DeKalb County. And so I don't really know what City of Atlanta's specific plans on it is, but the organization I think has been doing most advocacy for that is Park Pride. And I think 2 years ago at their Parks and Green Spaces conference, may have been 3 years ago, they presented this concept of having enough green space so that we could all walk to a park within 10 minutes. And the City of Atlanta signed on to that concept. But as you said, it doesn't cost nothing to get more green space, right?
Right.
The thing that I think is special about Atlanta is that because we have so many creeks that run through our neighborhoods and because we're so spread out, it does provide opportunity for green space. Because we can't build on every part of land that's around us. I'll have to refer you to Park Pride or the City of Decatur for that detailed information.
Okay.
Unless maybe one of my panels.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Anne, I have a question for you. You obviously, as your website says, enjoy painting in nature, painting natural wonders and outdoor spaces. But I wonder if working with Charlie and visiting all these 35 natural wonders in Georgia has in some way changed the way you work as an artist, or the way you see things as an artist, or how you go about setting your goals as an artist.
Yeah. It was an ambitious project. There's 100 paintings and drawings. The thing that these places demanded, which I did not predict, was that each of them spoke in a unique voice. They could not be fit into a cookie cutter template like, oh, I'm going to do a watercolor of all of these places and they will all look alike. And instead, I think each place really demanded an individual response. For example, Providence Canyon is a product of man-made erosion, and when you see it, the red clay and the white chalk is just washed away, and it does an imitation of the Western canyons, but it is almost like a violent assault on the land. And so when I painted it, I felt like there needed to be splatter of red paint, almost like blood, like the land is, exposing itself. On the other hand, when you go to Brasstown Bald on a winter morning and you get up to the peak at sunrise and there is a sea of clouds over the whole valley and the mountain peaks rise out of those like islands, that's a completely different feeling. And that was more like an Asian painting from a landscape where they have the mists and then the mountains and the trees come out of it. So I think that was the big surprise of the paintings in the book. I will tell you one other thing, which I did not foresee. There are places that you really want to see, say in early spring. You want to see the wildflowers here, and there's a window, 2 or 3 weeks. Or you want to go see George Smith State Park or Ebenezer Creek in the fall when the cypresses are turning golden and it reflects in the water like a perfect mirror. Well, if there's bad weather those whole 2 weeks, okay, you're done for the year. Try next year again. So that was part of trying to capture the perfect beauty and moments of each of these places. Became a kind of a logistic challenge that I had not faced before. So, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's insightful. And Charlie, sort of a counter question for you. I mean, you have known these places intimately. You've written about the science behind them and explaining them. But was there something about working with an artist that maybe revealed something new to you about the various places that you are in the book?
Yeah, when I saw her wonderful, beautiful paintings, I said, how in the world did I miss this? And I've been in these places all this time. I guess it takes an eye of an artist to see some of these places. I try to photograph them, but I think the eye of an artist is much more insightful. But anyway, every time I go in these places, most of them I learn something new, something I didn't see before. And I'll just say, I'm sure some of you will recognize this name, Dr. Charlie Wharton, who is my ecological hero, mentor. He's passed away 2008. But anyway, Dr. Wharton wrote this book called Natural Environments of Georgia, which describes 100 habitats. And it's still used as the basic guide in Georgia for describing land or habitat. And he had a quote in that book, and I don't think I'm quoting it verbatim, but it goes something like, and he'd been all over Georgia. I mean, from the mountains to the sea, all over. And he said, after 30 years of being a field biologist in Georgia, 30 years of doing this, I still run across places that leave me profoundly incredulous. And I feel like that a lot of times, and going into these places. And I said, I've been here before, but look at that. I hadn't seen that, and I said, and it leaves me profoundly incredulous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, I think the wonderful thing about both of these books, actually, is, as I read them, that they really are invitations to us to open ourselves to experience the nature that's around us, open our eyes more fully, open our ears, look closely at what we're seeing. Zana, you're an educator, and part of what your work involves is bridging communities with nature. And I wonder if there's a way in which your work with Jonah has affected your work in helping communities to open themselves up to the nature around us in different ways.
Yeah, that's a big part of why I do the work that I do and why I enjoy it, and how I wanted to come into the space of environmentalism and conservation. Just my background, knowing that I loved nature and I loved being outdoors, but didn't really have the language or the knowledge or the understanding of what hiking or outdoor recreation could be or was. So kind of just explored that on my own and coming to know and love a lot of the trails that are in both of these books. And just wanting communities to have that experience for themselves as well, making sure that these public lands are accessible to everyone and people know and feel that they are welcome there and that they are accessible places for them to be, that we don't have to always go, on an hours-long drive to have a moment of beauty and wonder in the outdoors, or to get that release that comes from being outside. And so working on these books, I think I definitely brought that perspective with me. And I think Jonah was also on board that was something that was really important. And the mission of these books was so people in whatever neighborhood of Atlanta you live in, you can have a green space that you can go to after work, have a neighborhood in your park that is just, right there for you.
And one of the nice things, I'll get your question in a minute, but one of the nice things I appreciated about your guidebook is that you rate each of the trails according to their accessibility, parking, safety, and so on. So you really are helping people understand whether this is a place that they feel invited to, really, and want to explore. It's a nice feature of the guidebook. Yes, sir.
I was wondering, as someone who's recently out of high school and is looking to go into college for forestry, I was wondering if there were any organizations you could recommend to volunteer my time at to help with conservation and nation and the management of our natural environment here in Georgia.
Great question, and I'm sure these people can give you a list. So, Charlie, the question is, this young man is preparing to go to college, perhaps to study forestry, and in the meantime, are there organizations, conservation organizations, forestry organizations, others, where he could volunteer?
Yeah, the primary organization that I know of, and I'm a member of it, that I know in Georgia, of course, there's the Georgia Conservancy, and a great organization, but a organization that's basically devoted to protecting and being a watchdog for our two national forests, the Chattahoochee National Forest and the Oconee National Forest, is Georgia Forest Watch, which is based in Dahlonega. But it's dedicated to, and they need volunteers who go out into the forest to watch over the forest. I don't want to get myself in trouble here, but I stay in trouble anyway, but
we grant you immunity here.
Wait. But anyway, in this day and time with what's going on in Washington, I'm fearful of what is going to happen to our forest. You know, are they going to be sold off or what? And they're going to need young folks like you to get in there and fight for our forest. I don't believe you were going or considering the Warnell School of Forestry at the University of Georgia, which is great. But just one organization is, like I said, Georgia Forest Watch. And then you have a bunch of other great organizations like Georgia Conservancy, Georgia Botanical Society, which I'm a member of, Birds Georgia, which used to be Georgia Audubon, great organization, Georgia Native Plant Society, on and on and on.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
One more question, sure.
I wondered if you had stories about the non-human inhabitants of these places, the plants or the birds or others that we would want to know about, the non-humans in these spots.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's the focus of a lot of these places. If you go there as a human, what are you going to appreciate? I mean, talk about the birds and the wildflowers and the salamanders and on and on and on. So, yeah, I mean, this whole book to me is focused on the natural ecology of the places. Of course, places like Gray's Mountain, that's where you go and dig for minerals, but still.
The flora and fauna are throughout. Actually, both of the books, because the hiking book, as you noted, includes specimen trees and other natural landmarks. I don't know that I encountered any animals as I read through the hiking trails book, but I'm sure you encountered animals as you were hiking these trails. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation, and let's give a round of applause